So please keep that in mind when if you want to ask a question or something. Please note that the webinar is being recorded. After that presentation, after that webinar, the webinar will be published and will be available on our website, so eena.org/webinars. In a few days, you'll be able to find the recordings of this webinar. We have an hour and a half together. There's quite a few points to discuss, but we're a reasonable amount of people. I see now 35 people connected. Probably there'll be a few more who will be joining. We want this webinar also to be interactive. So if you have any question, feel free to ask it. We'll have, of course, some dedicated moments also for questions to make sure that all your points are addressed. You can either do it by unmuting yourself and then asking the question, and that would be the most preferred option. You can use the chat also that is available, and then at the end of the presentation, at the end of the webinar, sorry, you see that we have a question and answer session. So I will be able to also read the questions that have been asked during the chat. So that's it for my points, and I will now give the floor to Malin Karlberg from VVA.
Yes, thank you very much, Benoit. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Malin Karlberg, and I am speaking during this introduction on behalf of the wider project team. So I'm an associate director at VVA. I've been tasked with coordinating this project, and this project been carried out by, among others, my colleague Stephanie Figueras at VVA, and by colleagues at EENA, GMV, RPN Legal and Tax, and also Technology. Many of us are on the call today and they'll be introducing themselves and their work in due course. So this project that we've been working on together, it's simply called Galileo for AEDs. It is a pilot study commissioned by DG Defi, and which we kicked off around a year ago. The overall aim of the project has been to investigate the possibility of using the Galileo-based location transmitted to PSAPs during an emergency communication, so that they can locate a nearby AED. And this is, of course, to save time and to save lives. And we will be presenting and demonstrating our main findings today. We are currently in the process of finalizing the study. So although we are close to the finishing line, I would also like to point out that the study is still ongoing. It hasn't been formally approved. And so the presentations here today, they should be considered to be preliminary until they are formally finalized and everything is closed. But we have advanced quite well, and I hope, actually, I'm certain that you will find the next 90 minutes informative, regardless of the preliminary nature of the presentations. So we have colleagues from the European Commission here today, and but before giving the floor to Susanna Mazanova from the Commission, who will provide her introductory remarks, I would also like to say thank you to everyone for dialing in, and thank you today for your participation. And Susanna, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, good afternoon, Malin. Good afternoon, everyone, all the participants to this workshop that has been organized today for this pilot project. My name is Zuzana Mazanova. I work for the European Commission for Director General for Defense and Space. One of the activities that we do, and the ambition of the Commission, is, of course, to make the maximum possible use of the space assets, of the data and the services that are provided by our EU space program, which consists, of course, of different components of Galileo, Copernicus, Gov.com, and also space situational awareness. Today, we are here to talk about Galileo, and especially how Galileo can be used for improving the response time for the public safety answering points during emergency communications and locating the nearest automated external defibrillator. This pilot project is a pilot project that has been proposed by the European Parliament. And it is one of the ways how European Parliament can put forward ideas for testing new policy initiatives or preparing the ground for the adoption of future measures. The objective of the pilot project has been already explained by Malin. Basically, as she said, it is to investigate the possibility of using Galileo-based location to locate the most closest available automated external defibrillator to the caller, so that the caller can take this defibrillator and immediately use it in a situation which could save lives, and if somebody is having a heart attack. So what we are expecting from this study is an analysis of the possibilities to develop and manage such a mechanism based on the EU Digital Registry of publicly available automated external defibrillators in the EU member states that can be used in the case of emergency, as I said. We hope that today's demonstration and the workshop will raise interest of the PSAPs and also inspire them to take advantage of this prototype created by the consortium. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Zuzana. Thank you, Malin, for the introduction. Right, so I guess we can start already with the program. And so we will start today's presentation by an analysis by the national and EU legislation relevant to AED mapping and associated challenges. And I believe I will give the floor to Daniele D'Antonio. Daniele, are you here?
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniele D'Antonio from R&P Legal and Tax.
Sorry for
interrupting.
Will you be?
No worries.
Will you be sharing your screen now?
No, because unfortunately.
Yes. Sorry, my bad.
Yes.
Yeah, that's. But I will be sharing it, and you just tell me when passing the slide.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm joining this meeting together with my colleague Carla Bonacci. We will present the findings, the preliminary findings of our legal analysis in order to explain how the automated defibrillators can help in finding in saving lives using the Galileo systems. So I would leave the floor to my colleague Carla in order to explain in details the preliminary findings of our legal analysis.
Thank you very much, Daniele. Thank you, Benoit, and good evening, everyone. As anticipated by my colleagues, we were in charge of the analysis of the legal legislation at national and the EU level for the implementation of the digital registries and of the most closest publicly available AEDs for emergency services. And if we may move to the next slides, we can thank you very much. We basically started our legal analysis by analyzing the national legislation of member state, of the overall member states, trying to understand how the mapping activities of medical devices in general and publicly available AEDs are currently regulated by national legislations, and starting from the precious EENA reports on the topic, we've improved the legal analysis, and we found that basically in several member states, when public AEDs are regulated in relation to the mapping activities, these devices could be mapped or not mapped. And when they are mapped, the national legislation provides for public AEDs to be mapped just for emergency services, or mapped for emergency services and public, or again, mapped, the related information can be accessible to the public, as summarized by the table below. In the next slides, we may find the main findings related related to this activity and to this type of regulation and legislation at national level, because the most important points that emerged from the legal analysis was that regardless of whether AEDs are mapped or not, and whether the regulation provides for mapping information to be accessible to everyone or just by emergency services, the most important experience, of course, with regard to the regulatory framework are currently in France, where there are several rules on the information and on the location of AEDs that shall be shared to the public through third parties and through the services of third parties. In Portugal, where are very important progresses that are currently being made to let mapping information available to dispatch services. In Slovenia, where there is an AEDs database under development for the public, or Spain, where there is a mapping on mobile app provided by health services, and Austria, where AEDs maps can be integrated with photos or other information. If we move to the next slides, we may find that on the other hand, with regard to the European legislation that was necessarily assessed during the overall implementation of the project, the most important regulatory act was the MDR, the so-called MDR. Regulation 745 of 2017. This regulation is the most important piece of legislation with regard to the overall regulatory framework of medical devices in the EU. And this regulation provides for important rules with regard to the classification of AEDs, because these MDs and this type of active therapeutic devices are now classified in the class 3 of medical devices. The regulation, of course, explains in detail what are the main duties for manufacturer of class 3 medical devices that shall necessarily perform a conformity assessment procedure as specified in the annexes to the regulation. But in relation to the scope of the project, the most important elements of these regulations are provided in Article 27, 32, and 33, which provide for important rules for the implementation of the UDI system and database, and that sets out important rules requiring member states. Since under this rule, member states may require healthcare institutions to store the UDI system for class 3 medical devices, and under the same rules, manufacturers shall draft a summary of their medical devices, in particular with collecting and making available to the public all the information on the safety and the clinical performances of their medical devices, all the information that shall be subsequently made available through the European database of medical devices, the so-called EENA. In the next slides, we may find another important piece of legislation that was analyzed during the overall implementation of the legal analysis, the so-called EECC Directive 1972 on 2018, which states important crucial rule for a wide categories of stakeholders involved in this type of communications activity, because the directive establishes that providers of number-based interpersonal communication services shall guarantee access to emergency services through emergency communication. If the providers cannot guarantee access to emergency services or cannot give information about the caller's location, they shall inform the member state's institution clearly and as soon as possible about this situation. Member states, on the other hand, are responsible for the capabilities and the technical equipment of the public safety entry points, and they shall ensure that all services are provided through a connection with a specified level of quality. The directive, furthermore, specifies that if member states cannot ensure this type of level of services, services provider may not be able to ensure that the emergency call are routed to the most suitable PSAPs. In this case, it may not be physically feasible to for the provider to share information on the caller location. This is why the code and in general one of the main recommendations from a policy perspective can be that member states shall ensure that common standards on reliability of routing and connection are implemented in all member states, and if these standards are not implemented, member states shall designate a single PSAPs to receive emergency communication. In the next slides, we may find that there are, of course, several legal challenges in the implementation of this type of central and unique registry of publicly available AEDs. For example, there could be several important elements and challenges related to the standardization and the interoperability at EU level of the necessary registries that shall be created and implemented at national level. Another major legal challenge is represented by the simplification of the access procedures to the registry and the improvement of something like system-based systems that are based on the user experience and or on process of machine learning to better understand what are the main difficulties in reaching the registry or in using the registry. But from a legal perspective, of course, one of the most crucial points was represented by the liabilities, the regimes of liabilities that shall be necessarily addressed at the legislation level to allow a successful implementation of this registry, because the starting point is that any person can claim compensation for damage caused by a defective of the device. Therefore, if in the use of AEDs, a person suffers from any kind of damage, manufacturer shall have a sufficient financial cover proportionate to the risk class of their AEDs, in this case class 3, and proportionate to the size of their enterprise for any potential liability arising from a defect of their AED. But in relation to the functioning of the registry, and with a wider consideration of the overall implementation and scope of the project, with regard to the risk arising from incorrect, unavailable, or missing information in the European registry, if some damage occurs due to incorrect, unavailable, or missing information in the registry regarding, of course, for example, the location of the AEDs or its status and its functioning, it's vital to guarantee that first of all, the communications of caller location during emergency call. And second point is that it's equally vital to clearly allocate the liability among each stakeholder in case of damage caused by these circumstances. Therefore, and in this way, I can conclude the main findings that we realized that during the legal analysis, and in the next slides, we found that with regard to the allocations liability, first of all, manufacturers of AEDs are responsible for the provision of information on their medical devices, including, and this is a crucial and important point, included all information related to the functioning, maintenance, and performances of their medical devices. Therefore, for class 3 medical device, and of course for AEDs, the post-market surveillance, which is a crucial responsibility of manufacturer, shall include a verification of material and components produced, purchased, or proved for the manufacturing process of the AEDs, and manufacturers shall therefore provide in the operating instruction any relevant information on the identification of consumable parts and parts that eventually needs to be replaced. While for example, for mapping organization, if the incorrectness, unavailability, or lack of information in the registry is due to a malfunctioning or non-updating of the registry, the most important strategy to assess this type of liability is an assessment of the event and of the practical circumstances to clarify if and what are the concrete causes of the event itself, and to recognize or exclude liability of the mapping organization of the mapping organization involved. Since mapping organizations shall regularly check and are responsible to verify the correspondence of information with the status contained in the registry with the status of facts, while emergency services, even though the national system of PSAPs ensure the transfer of emergency communication and of the related data to emergency services, the latter subjects are of course responsible to always verify and to have an adequate level of acknowledgement and awareness of the relevant information. I think that in the next slides there's nothing to be added, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I know it's not easy to summarize legal analysis in only a few minutes.
Thank you.
I know you're quite busy today, so it's great you found time to explain that. Perhaps we have time for one question, Maxime.
Yes, no problem, of course.
If there's any, I don't see anything for the moment. Otherwise, we'll move to the next part. No? Well, thank you, Carla. Thank you, Daniele.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Benoit.
Thank you. And so we'll move to the next.
Thank you, Benoit.
Thank you. So we'll move to the next part. And now, Alexi Gizikis from EENA, you will present the stakeholders' requirements in AED mapping.
Thank you, Benoit. I'll share my screen. Okay, so you should all be able to see my screen. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexis Gizikis. I'm a project manager at EENA, and I'm very happy to have been part of the team of this project, which is looking at how Galileo can help increase and improve the use of AEDs. Today, I will talk about the work we did around the mapping of stakeholders and their requirements. And the findings from an analysis we did on the existing AED registries and maps in the European Union. So let's get started with the stakeholders. There are 6 groups of stakeholders involved in the preparation and operation of an AED registry. The first 2 groups are self-explanatory: the manufacturers of defibrillators and the AED owners. Then the AED mapping companies or apps are the providers of digital registries and digital services that help locate defibrillators. Emergency services are the next group, and in this project they are seen as the main users of the digital registry. They use it to guide first responders who are arriving on the scene, but maybe not equipped with a defibrillator, or to guide also bystanders to the nearest device. Then public authorities, which play a key role in determining the policies around the use of defibrillators and the digital registry. Public authorities can initiate the establishment of such a registry. They can inform the population about its availability and determine also how a device can be registered in such a registry. And lastly, we have the general public, which can also be a user, either directly by looking for the nearest defibrillator or indirectly by being guided by another person, such as an emergency call taker. So having defined the stakeholders, we can look at what registries exist and how they are used. The objective of this study has been to understand what is the current state of the art regarding AED mapping and use in the EU. And through this analysis, we have been trying to answer the questions such as, do AED maps exist in the member states? Who is using them? Are they used by emergency services and how? And lastly, what are some good practices observed in the different implementations? Our methodology included desk research, a survey of stakeholders where we received 31 responses from 18 countries, and we also interviewed representatives from 12 countries. So overall, we gathered data and we studied the current practice in the 27 member states, Norway and Iceland. So moving on to some of our findings, we have found that registries exist or are in development in most member states, and specifically in 27 out of the 29 countries that we studied. They are maintained by either private or public entities, and there is an equal spread between the two, and we could not observe a clear pattern there. In terms of their architecture, in some cases, there is one registry for the whole country, and in some other cases, there is one registry per region. And usually this depends and follows the already existing structure of the public administrations in each country. The key point from the study is that although registries exist, they are not always used by emergency services. And approximately 50% of those who responded to the survey say that they consider the information which is available in the registries as not sufficient. And this is also in agreement with the feedback we gathered from the interviews. So let's look at some of the challenges. The first one is that registries do not always include information about all the available AEDs, and the registration of a device is voluntary in most countries, and there is a need to promote AED registration as a measure to increase the entries in the digital registries and also increase their use. So while the first step is to register the AED, it does not stop there. There is another need to establish a procedure for updating the entries of the registry. Otherwise, there will always be questions if the AED is still there or if it is still operational and so on. And there are many different ways that countries achieve this, from campaigns for citizens to update the registry and win a prize, to sending frequent reminders to the owners about validating the information, and conducting regular inspections to make sure that the information is accurate. The next challenge is that information is not precise enough. For example, an AED might be placed in a business establishment or in a shopping center, which is open only on specific days and hours, and this is also additional information that needs to be available in the registry. And similarly, when a defibrillator is available in a big building, such as, for example, a shopping center, the address of the location is not enough, but we also need clear instructions on how to find the device in the building where it is. So overall, there is a need to ensure that the registry contains all required data. And this brings us to the data that is needed. The first one is geographic position in terms of both the coordinates and an address. Opening days and hours of the building where the device is located, we already covered this. instructions on how to find the AED inside the building, and a very good practice here is to provide photos on how to reach the device in the building. Also, sometimes defibrillators are locked in boxes that can be opened only by an access code, and this information should also be stored in the registry. And then we also have data such as the contact person, contact details, the AED model, and the date of last update of the information or date of last replacement of batteries and electrodes, which are data that can help validate whether the information is still accurate. So this brings to the last part of this work, which is a list of requirements for the stakeholders involved. We developed a list of 49 requirements covering both operational and functional needs of the registry. And I will give some examples of the requirements. We have the functional requirement stating that AED search functionality of the digital registry should take into account the hours of availability of the AED. And the rationale of this requirement is that the registry should provide search results with AEDs that can be accessed at a given time of the incident and at a given time of the search. Then we have requirement with ID 40 that states that the registry should provide third parties and systems with the ability to retrieve data from the database. This is a functional requirement important for emergency services, to have the data within the systems that are already in use, because the use of an additional or an external system might be avoided during an emergency call. Lastly, the operational requirement 19 states that emergency services should define protocols on how their staff should provide the location of the nearest AED, and this is due to the different scenarios we observed during the interviews. So when the emergency call arrives and it is classified, the top priority for the call taker is to provide guidance on CPR and then to have someone fetch a defibrillator. Now, this might happen in many different ways. In some cases, the call taker might ask a second bystander to make an additional call to 112. And another call taker will then direct the second caller to the nearest AED. In other cases, a second call taker might directly call the person who's responsible for a nearby device and ask the person to take it where the incident is. And we also have countries with citizen responder groups. Citizen responders would usually be notified by a smartphone application, and the volunteers who are nearby will run to provide CPR and then fetch an AED. Of course, all this happening at the same time while the ambulance is on its way to the incident. And on this item, I think it's worth noting that our observation is that citizen responder programs show a good potential to increase the use of AEDs in out-of-hospital cardiac arrests. And this is all from me. Thank you for your attention, and I give the floor back to Benoit.
Thank you very much, Alexi. Efraristo. We have actually one question or observation actually from Anne-Marike Wiemann. I hope my pronunciation is correct. So I'm going to read it. In the overview of the stakeholders, the distributor network of AEDs is missing. They can have an important role in directing their customers to the map as they know the precise location of AED placements. Alexi, I don't know if you want to react to that or...
Sure, this is a good point. We have not a specific group for these stakeholders. We have considered it within the AED manufacturers group, but it is a good point, and we'll make sure that in our final report we make this distinction.
Yeah, and actually, if I may add an example, I remember in countries such as Sweden, for instance, I know that in the distribution of AEDs, when selling the AEDs, the resellers provide some like leaflet, for instance, with information on the registry, with information on how to register the defibrillator. So that indeed can be quite an important stakeholder. All right. And then we have a question from Irache Gomez from Atos. I may have missed it, but I was wondering if the legislation considers moving AEDs to, i.e. the ones carried in the booth of police patrol cars. I don't know if we have someone here who can answer that question. No, I don't hear anyone. Or Irache, what I will do is I will check internally with our colleagues who presented the legal parts recently, and then I will get back to you. Thank you. All right, so on my side, I will continue myself. So thank you, Alexi. And I have a good news for you is that I don't have any PowerPoint presentation for the presentation of the best practices in AED mapping, but I will still share my screen because basically what I wanted to do here is just to illustrate what Alexi has just presented with just a few concrete examples of some registries in a few countries. So we will not see all the countries in Europe and all the registries. I just chose a few examples. It doesn't mean that like the ones that are not presented are very bad and so on. But just, I wanted to mention a few examples and to comment on why I find these interesting. And if you're here, I believe you're not on holidays yet. So let's start a tour of Europe actually with the AED registries. So I'll first bring you to Denmark, which is, so that's a website called, basically it means defibrillator.dk, and it's managed by some Hurt Foundation. And basically you can see here the defibrillators on the map of Denmark. Of course, you'll find a bigger concentration in the most populous part of Denmark. So you can directly actually write either like your address or select a region or select a commune. And let's go, for example, well, here actually it's a very cute town in the south of Copenhagen. So here you see a few defibrillators. It's a small city, so there's not plenty of defibrillators. So, but for instance, you see that there's still a few defibrillators. What you see in green is the defibrillators that are always on accessible at any time. What you see in yellow, these are the defibrillators that are accessible during the opening hours of the building. And then there's a few here that we don't see in red, where the defibrillators is basically closed. But let's take this one. So for instance, so here when you click on the defibrillator, you directly have the information. That's in Danish, unfortunately, so it's not really made for like foreigners, let's say. But you see directly these are some information. It basically says that you can find the defibrillator like on the wall next to the entrance. The defibrillator is always accessible. However, the box is locked. So here the code is written. So you have to do the code 2032 to open the door. Sorry. And there's always a reminder to call 112, of course, for a heart attack. And what I like also is that this comes almost always in the Danish registry with picture, which is of course quite useful to find the defibrillator. So it's quite easy to use as a website. Here you see all the information, but you have basically plenty of defibrillators. All right, so this was a Danish example, and you'll find similar registries in many other countries. I'll now bring you to Finland, where you can see on this map that like there's of course many defibrillators. What I like is directly based on my location. I have a defibrillator that is directly recommended to me. The website, by the way, is very easy to remember. It's defi.fi. And well, the closest to me, I'm in Brussels, so it's of course doesn't work super well for me at the moment. But if you're in Finland, it will directly select the nearest defibrillators. But so then if you zoom in, you can select some defibrillators. So let's take this one, for instance. This here I can translate in English. That will be easier. So here you see how far you are from it. Of course, I'm a bit far. You see the name of the building, the address, the availability information, as we've seen with Alexi's presentation. It's a very important piece of information is the opening hours and days of the building. Even a contact person with a phone number in case there's any issue to reach it. And what I like in this registry is that you have a button to basically see the route to the nearest defibrillator. So here I directly have the navigation instruction on like how to go to the defibrillator. Of course, for me, I'm very far, but if you're in Finland, of course, you'll be a bit closer to the defibrillator. And you also have a very useful link on how to perform CPR, because that, of course, comes with using the defibrillator. And of course, a reminder to call 112. So I find this example very interesting, of course. Not very far, still in the north of Europe. I like the Swedish registry. It's very fast, very easy to use. You see that there are plenty of defibrillators, of course, especially in the south of the country, which is where the biggest part of the population lives. And you see, for instance, in the capital, in Stockholm, you have like registries almost everywhere. It's, as I said, very fast. And you directly have the information you need. So like the opening, so that's the Mediterranean Museum of Stockholm. So that's the opening days, the opening hours, and directly clear instructions on how to access the defibrillator, like with pictures, like where's the entrance. Here you have to go to that door, and here is the defibrillator. So it's quite straightforward, easy to use. And yeah, it's easy to navigate. Of course, you can directly write an address. And the name of the website is basically aedregistry.se, so that's also quite easy to find and remember. Yeah, and just to mention a few other examples, I won't go too much in the details of that, but you have similar registry in Norway. That one is hosted on the website of the Health Services of Norway, so it's 113.no/AED registry. And you can see, so here we're in Oslo, and you can see that you have quite many defibrillators. When you click on one, you would have the information on the building, the floor, some information, the opening hours of the building, some contact details also in case you need help, etc. So you can also search by address. So it kind of takes also what I have already already showed to you. And yeah, there's other examples. So here is also an example from Austria. You can see that there are plenty of defibrillators a bit everywhere referenced in that registry, and it's honestly quite, it's very good. I really like the Austrian registry. It's also easy to remember how to access it. Is 144, which is the number for emergency medical services in Austria, .at/defi. And here you have the information directly on so which type of defibrillator, how to find the directions, where exactly is the defibrillator attached, how far it is from the street. You can find some pictures also of the place, and other information actually if needed. So that's also a quite interesting registry. And finally, I just wanted to make a point that in many countries, and Alexis has mentioned that, you have applications that have been developed, and you can find these registries on applications. So you have examples from a bit everywhere in France, in Spain, and so on. So, but just to mention here, this is an example of Czech Republic. So Zakronka is actually a Czech app originally, but you can have access to the registry online as well. And here again, when you click on the registry, you have information on the address, and some pictures also on how to find it. So yeah, this is also an example with here description on how to find it, the type of the defibrillator, etc. So we see that in many of these examples we find some similar patterns, and this illustrates what Alexia has presented in the earlier presentation. So that is it for that quick tour of Europe. I don't know if you have any question. No? Otherwise, we will continue with GMV. I don't know to whom I should give the floor from GMV. Will actually travel to Spain now. Javier, maybe you're the one who will be speaking.
Yes, good afternoon to everybody. According to the agenda, I think there is a first
Yes.
bullet on the analysis of the feasibility, right?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. I forgot.
Okay.
I forgot one. I forgot you, Stephanie.
Okay.
No worries. No worries.
Thank you for that. So Right, Stephanie, you should be able to share your screen now, and you will present on the analysis of the feasibility and cost assessment of creating an EU digital registry.
Indeed, indeed. I'm just trying to better navigate through. Maybe give me just a second. Okay. Is it possible to see the presentation now?
Yes, we can see the presentation.
Okay, perfect. So I will now present our part from the study, which is the assessment of the feasibility of creating an EU digital registry. And so in this part, I'm going to present the different steps that we had in order to create our final cost and benefit analysis. And I think the first step that the team had was to better understand what are the current practices and regulations that exist among the 27 member states in order to create their maturity level. And here, the maturity level is understood as how far or close they are from the current envisioned pan-European registry. And here we looked at indicators such as, do they have a voluntary or a mandatory registry in place? Do they have an accessible map? Do they even have an app? How easy it is it accessible? Is it, all of these kind of elements that have been presented already in the beginning by our legal team. And we then created these 4 different clusters from the champions, let's say, to advanced, medium, and lower. We, from our analysis, we found out that there are already 5 countries that we can classify them as champions, so that they have the closest model to the envisioned registry. There are 9 that can be classified as advanced, 8 as medium, and 5 with a lower maturity level. And in case an EU digital registry is actually put in force, the countries that have a lower maturity level would actually benefit 100% from this, because they have no infrastructure, or they don't have such a robust infrastructure as compared to the more advanced countries, which also means that they will have to allocate more resources in comparison to the most advanced or champion countries. And take into account this analysis, which is based on a very simple list as with the yes and no check. We then developed the estimates of the benefits that can be attributed for cost and benefit analysis. And we then also proceeded with the comparison between each country. In this next slide, what we can actually see are the 6 main key stakeholders identified. We have the public authorities, we have the emergency services, mapping organizations, AED, private owners, manufacturers, and the society, which at the end would benefit by the increased install base of the AEDs. And what is very important to take note from this presentation is that while in the costs we have 2 levels, which are quantitative monetizable costs and qualitative ones, which derive from the implementation of this registry. And the benefits, we actually have 3 different levels. We also have quantitative and qualitative, but most importantly is we have quantitative but non-monetizable benefits. And the reason why we have this category, it's because these non-monetizable benefits are social indicators. We cannot forget that the purpose of this registry is to increase the number of defibrillators that are publicly displayed and not to profit from the unfortunate event of someone actually dying or suffering from a cardiac arrest. And therefore, we decided not to monetize them. Even though there are statistics, and we know that there are different kinds of elements out there that can tell us how many people have suffered, how many people survived, what has been the survival rate after 30 days, we decided not to quantify them for this simple purpose. And so the main results from the first part of our benefits analysis, I think the first one is the most important one, is that on the contrary than what we initially thought, what a possible registry would create which is a decrease in the time to access a defibrillator, it actually showed that the time to reach a defibrillator was constant. What it actually increased is the chances for bystander defibrillation. And this is very important because it means that there is a raise of awareness. People are not only aware, but are also interested in the topic. And so the chances of survival also increase. And then when it comes to private AED owners, although they will not experience direct economic benefits, they will have indirect benefits that are not monetizable, because private AED owners, they will also benefit from the increase of the numbers of public available defibrillators. But all in all, what it's very important to understand is that the overall benefits are more qualitative than quantitative, because what the registry will create is actually a harmonization process among all 27 EU member states. It will improve the capacity for higher registry and also for processing data. And then, of course, at the end, we cannot forget the manufacturers. We will have the highest profit rate because there will be an increase of installed base of AEDs. There will be a higher purchase and also a need for replace certain pieces every 3 to 5 years. And when we come to our final results, when we did our analysis of our costs and benefits, we actually had to look at the voluntary uptake, because countries that already have a mandatory uptake, we assume that they already have the necessary infrastructure and the necessary costs allocated to it. And so we looked into those countries that only had a voluntary one, and we created 3 different scenarios. We have a more optimistic one, which foresees 100% registry by 2030. We have a more realistic one, which would foresee considerably more time, but still reach 100% by 2035. And then we have a slightly more pessimistic, let's say, scenario where the full registry only reaches 80% by 2035. And in all 3, the net present value is negative. And this is because even though emergency services and manufacturers had positive results, at the end, public authorities and AED owners would experience the highest expense. This is because they would have to invest in the increase of public displaced AEDs. There are also certain costs associated to it, such as training and licensing. And of course, in the case of the AED owners, they also need to ensure that there is no liability costs associated to it by not following the implemented rules and regulations. And so these are our short and quick presentation of our results.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. It was very interesting. It would have been a pity to skip it. Is there any question about that presentation? To do so, feel free to either unmute yourself and ask the question or to write in the chat. No, don't see any question. We'll have a second chance later. So now I give the floor back to you, Javier.
Thanks a lot, Benoit. So good afternoon to everybody. This is Javier Fidalgo from GMV. I have been the project manager from GMV for this project, and I'm here with my colleagues from GMV who were in charge of the technical activities. So Gonzalo Castro, Jorge Andreu, and Álvaro Alcolea, they are connected. So basically, GMV, just for a short presentation, we are a technological company which is devoted to different markets, and we have a special focus in the space domain, and in particular in GNSS and Galileo systems. So after this short introduction, we are going to play a video showing how the prototype we have been developing in this project on a system for localization of closed AEDs. But just for you to know, in this project, so GMV has been in charge of the specification, design, development, and testing of a prototype of a digital European Union registry for AEDs. In particular, this prototype has two main functionalities. The first one is a digital registry, including a digital map with the position of a set of defibrillators around Europe. So it's possible to create defibrillators or to suppress them. And this digital map is associated to a geodatabase accessible via OGC web services. And secondly, the prototype also has a functionality for a routing algorithm which, based on the position of the caller in an emergency situation, is able to compute the closest AED in travel time from this person, and also taking into account a set of information, as Alexis was presenting before, as for example, the opening hours or the closing hours of the buildings in which the AEDs are inside. So in this video, apart from showing, let's say, the design of the prototype and how to use it, we also do a demonstration comparing, let's say, the reaction time using the prototype versus the reaction time considering a PSAP operator which who manually looks for an AED in the map. And also we consider special cases, for example, based on defibrillators that may be located into buildings which are closed at the time of the emergency. So, for example, in order to identify the added value of this prototype of the digital registry, or also, for example, special situations in which visually the defibrillator seems closest to the person in danger, because it's closest in distance, but perhaps it's not true. It's not the closest AED in travel time because, for example, there may be a way which is closed, for example, by a door. Okay, so this is mainly the introduction. So I will kindly ask Benoit to play the video. So the video is visually descriptive. You can see what is achieved with this prototype. So here we show how to log a user in the registry. So we can add operators and also remove them. So in this way, we can add new AEDs with a set of information, as Alexis was presenting before. such as the model of the AED, the battery, the city, the country, the postal code, the opening hours and closing hours of the building, indications to locate the AED within the building, the position in latitude and longitude coordinates, etc. We also have the option to create the AED directly in the map. We can also automatically upload AEDs information based on, for example, an Excel file in which all the fields are filled. So this prototype has the capability to automatically upload a lot of data. And then this is the routing functionality. So once we have defined registry. So this is the routing functionality for selecting the closest AED to the person in an emergency. And we compare how an operator would do manually with a map against the use of the prototype. So this is an example that the operator missed the opening hours of the defibrillator. So executing automatically means to introduce the coordinates of the person in emergency, and then the prototype is able to compute the closest AED position very fast. Of course, in a building which is open. And in the video, we also provided an example of an AED which visually was perceived as the closest one, but there was a door in a street which was closed. So it was the wrong closest AED, while the prototype is able to recognize these kind of things based on Google Maps to identify which is the closest AED in travel time. So here we show a typical comparison of extreme situations in which an operator is not able to locate the closest AED within an open building fast, because there are some complications, and while the prototype is able to identify the closest AED very fast. So basically, this is everything for the demonstration of the prototype.
Okay, thank you very much, Javier, for this presentation, which actually brings us to the end of the round of presentations we had. We had planned already in the program a last round of questions and answers. So that's the moment. If you have some concerns, some comments to make, or some questions, it's the moment to take the floor and explain it. Okay, I don't hear anything. I see a question written on the chat by Stijn de Kessel from the FPS, Federal Public Service for Health in Belgium. So is that app only available for call takers or for the whole public?
So in principle, the preliminary design we have been performed is this app to be available for call takers, but the design in principle would could be modified for other purposes.
Okay, thank you, Javier. And we have another question from Matthias Janström. So would the AED registry be open to third-party companies such as the citizen responder system? And I see this a similar question from Paul Dardel in France. Will it be linked to citizens responders? I think it can be linked to citizens responders in principle. As Javier said, this has been preliminary designed for emergency call takers, but for the regions where there is a citizen responders program, which I strongly recommend, it is very helpful in the countries that have it. I think it can also be used for these purposes. Yes, it's just a matter like we saw with Javier's presentation. So that just needs to be integrated basically in the system, the way the operation, but it should be easy to do. Is there any other question? I do not hear or see anything. All right. So thank you for your time. I hope this webinar was helpful for you. So as you know, this webinar has been recorded, so the recording will be shared online in the next days. So just stay tuned, and it should be soon available on eena.org/webinars. We're of course at your disposal for any other question or any follow-up information. Malin, I don't know if you want to conclude this webinar.
Thank you, Benoit. I don't have so much else to say than just to thank everyone who's participated and for your interest, and also to through the wider consortium for all the work that we put in. You have put in to organize this, and to Susanna and Thea from the European Commission for their support on the project. And we're happy to, I think our you can contact us via Benoit's email at EENA, and we're very happy to answer any further questions if you have any. But thank you for me as well.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon, a great summer, and speak to you soon.
Great afternoon. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Good afternoon. Thanks a lot. Bye.